Hi, everyone. My name's Lindsay Mackenzie, and I am a community engagement producer at CBC Manitoba. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about stealing thunder, and that as a way of building relationships with your customers and also improving the reputation of your company. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm from Winnipeg. I've also lived in many other Canadian cities, such as Kitchener, Waterloo, Vancouver, and in the Niagara region. And so my background is primarily in sports, arts, and then also news media industries. And I work to bridge the gap between customers and also what the company needs in terms of marketing to those customers. So being at CBC, I've been here for about 8 years now, and I've had various roles in marketing and communications. Most recently, I was in Ontario and I managed the communications for 6 of their smaller market newsrooms, which are the newsrooms outside of Toronto and Ottawa. And now being back in Manitoba, I work as a community engagement producer for the Winnipeg newsroom. And what I'm doing in some of my spare time, I'm completing a master's in communication management at McMaster University. And so that master's program and some of the work that I've done there is actually what I'm going to be talking to you about today, this stealing thunder theory. Something a little bit about me personally. So I'm an aunt to 4 little guys, 3 nieces and a nephew. I'm a classically trained singer. And what I'm reading right now, I love biographies. And so Margaret Thatcher is one that I'm tackling currently. Love to hear about people that have leadership positions and experience humanness in moments of struggle and difficulty and how they rise to overcome that. So that's kind of what keeps me motivated right now. So let's talk a little bit about what stealing thunder is. So stealing thunder, the concept of it really is that a company wants to establish itself as a credible and legitimate news source by being the first to break news. So in the new digital and social environment that companies find themselves in, that individuals find themselves in, what the research talks about and what we're noticing is that social media provides an incredible opportunity for organizations to take back the voice of their own story away from newsrooms and away from journalists. And there's approaches to do that successfully. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the research that I did working on my master's, where I looked at a specific incident in Winnipeg around liquor mart thefts in Winnipeg. And I wanted to explore how successful the Winnipeg Police Service was at being able to steal thunder during that particular moment in time. And I've left some references here for you in case you want to look up some more of the research around this particular idea. So to recap, because I'm not sure who my audience is, if we're all Winnipeggers or if there are others out there, but in a 12-month stretch, so from August 2018 to September 2019, liquor marts in Winnipeg in particular experienced nearly 7,000 shoplifting/thefts. And that was an increase of 82% from 2017. So we saw a significant rise in crime. And that prompted my question. So did social media play a role in these liquor mart thefts? And was the media attention also part of that increase in the thefts? And so I wanted to explore that from the Winnipeg Police Service perspective. And so I conducted interviews with the Winnipeg Police Service senior leadership, so their police chief, their head of public information, and then a uniformed police officer who was also involved in as a public relations liaison. So this is sort of a sample of what the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries was dealing with at that time. They were engaged in trying to find solutions to preserve public safety. And the Winnipeg Police were offering their best recommendations in how to do that. So how and to what extent did the Winnipeg Police Service steal thunder during this this incident. So, some of the things that I learned while doing this case study, and I make this comment sort of in jest, but don't boil the ocean. So this was a pretty big topic, looking at a lot of different factors that could be at play in terms of understanding citizens or customers, right? What their behaviors and insights were telling or prescribing to the Winnipeg Police Service in terms of how they were choosing to engage in relationships with the citizens. So that being said, obviously my first case study, and so it was ambitious, but to give you a sense of the background in this. So about 115 pieces of data were collected. So that has to do with basically what I did was I looked at press releases that were issued by the Winnipeg Police Service that had to do with thefts at liquor marts. I also looked at media reports by media news organizations that were multi-platform. So that means that they had a presence on radio, they had a presence on the web, and they also had a presence on television. And then I also analyzed the social media accounts for both Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries and the Winnipeg Police Service to see what they were posting about during incidences of liquor mart thefts. And the last piece of that information was when general citizens had published their own either video or posts catching a theft in the act. And so that's what I chose to kind of look at. As I mentioned, I interviewed Winnipeg Police Service leadership, and then as I talked about sort of those social media and news scans, which are part of those 115 pieces of data. So here's what I found out when I sort of analyzed that situation from August 2018 to really December 2019. So within that time, and within the liquor mart thefts that were taking place and the ones that were receiving increased media coverage, there were about 18 key events that were publicly documented. Of those 18 key events, and when I say they're publicly documented, it's because either the Winnipeg Police Service published a press release or citizens published an incident themselves on social media. So 10 of those 18 incidences, I would say the Winnipeg Police Service did steal thunder, which means that they were the first to let the public and the media know about the incident. And then in 6 incidences, citizens broke news about that. So when citizens were breaking news, so when they were the ones disclosing this and publishing it, on average, there were 5.5 news articles that were published as a result. When the Winnipeg Police Service published the incidences, there were on average about one article from news outlets. So that tells me that when the organization that's responsible for public safety, as the police are in this instant, when they chose to break that news, that the correlation to news coverage was decreased because there's a perception that that organization has the ability to provide information and disclose it in a transparent way to the media. So there's an exchange of trust that's going on there. So here's a sense of, to kind of give you a sense of why I make that analysis, or why I make that finding, is some of what took place in the interviews. So what the Winnipeg Police Service would say is that when they have a press release that they issue, or when they hold a press conference, traditional media picks up on it 98 to 100%. So that is very uncommon for any organization to be receiving that kind of media coverage. But what that tells me is that there's an appetite amongst newsroom for crime reporting. And so the Winnipeg Police Service enjoy a very high uptake. They also talked about being the ones to break the story first, because they were the ones sort of seeing the increase in thefts by virtue of their investigators alerting them to this. So they were able to get out in front of this early. And, I would argue that I think there's a few other things they could have done using this theory of stealing thunder that would have improved their reputation. And we'll get to that in a little bit, sort of that link between what stealing thunder can do and how it can improve your reputation. But in any case, I mean, they early on indicated that they were seeing the seeds of this kind of phenomenon taking place. So one thing that's also really instructive is that they talked about not really inviting a lot of feedback from the public. And so it's more about sort of the public having the information that they need to be safe. So one of the things that I suggest is that while it's important to break the news and to push information out, part of the opportunity with social media and with your websites or apps is that you've created this opportunity for two-way dialogue with your customers. You've created the tools for relationship. And that allows you to enhance your reputation. In this case, the Winnipeg Police Service, enhance your reputation of being there for public safety. And you can start to make good on that promise in a sense. So how does this idea of stealing thunder, how do you do this as a company or as a personal brand? So the idea is that issues gain traction in the mainstream media if a suitable or prompt response is not taken. So you want to reduce the negative experience to that issue. So this is all about transparency here. Can I get as much information as I need to have to be able to be transparent with my customer, transparent with the public, so that we're not hiding anything. And it sort of, pops the balloon in a sense. If the balloon is tension, it kind of pops that balloon. You're disclosing. The level of disclosure is improving your reputation. Now, if we look at today's environment, in light of kind of COVID-19 and what citizens and consumers of news are choosing to make decisions around to make sure that they have credible information, this is also kind of instructive about this theory of stealing thunder. So there's a couple different websites or apps that take a look at overall kind of traffic to different apps and websites and things like that. Apptopia is one and SimilarWeb is the other. And so there was a New York Times article that came out last week exploring news consumption in the US. And then also compared news consumption or consumption of information to primary source websites. And so what this tells me, or what I kind of, a light bulb went off in my head, is that this is exactly an example today of how organizations are stealing thunder away from media. So you'll notice the CDC, as well as Johns Hopkins University, they're seeing a significant uptake in page views and traffic as a result of being primary source information. And so what this tells me, if I'm a communicator or marketer or a user experience researcher, is that I can take this knowledge and apply it to a strategy where I'm improving the access to information that my citizens or my public have with what our purpose and mission are. So in contrast, you see sort of Wikipedia there, where they're more generalists, right? And so their traffic has decreased. So I think this is also telling us too that our audience is quite savvy. And if given the opportunity to know about this via, marketing, via those tools, that they will take advantage of that. And so this provides a direct relational connection to citizens and to customers. And we don't need necessarily media as an intermediary in the same way. So this was really, really interesting to find out. And I believe if you were to look at currently in the climate of COVID-19, government websites, provincial government websites, federal government websites, travel websites, you're going to see a similar trend. So while news consumption is certainly up during this crisis, you're seeing much more exponential increases to traffic on websites for primary source information, to put it that way. So why does stealing thunder work? Why is it valuable? So there's three different explanations for why. If you treat messages just like commodities, the more of them there are, the less they carry value. So it's volume. The more transparent you are, the more information you make available, the less triggering it is, the less tension there is in that message. There's also this theory around expectations. So if this idea that if you reveal negative information about yourself, you're maybe violating the audience's expectations of you, but at the same time, that exchange also can enhance trust. It builds candor, it builds credibility. And so that enhances your position with your customer and with the media. And then the last piece of this is sort of changing the meaning theory. So when you reveal negative information, what can happen in terms of the organization's relationship with the journalist is that the journalist may discount the importance of the message because of the amount at which you're revealing information. And so then it also may downplay the severity of the crisis. Now, I mean, I would argue that we want to be ethical and we want to be responsible in our use of this theory and the decision making. So again, when we're revealing information, we want it to be truthful, certainly. So again, so what using this stealing thunder theory, what does this accomplish? So what some of this research is finding is that organizations and their public relations professionals are perceived as more credible by newsrooms and by their customers. Journalists indicate also a greater interest in the story because you're providing more substance in what you're releasing, more fact. And also, there really isn't a difference in terms of the perception of crisis severity or the framing that reporters use their news leads for. So there's a stronger, what that means is there's a stronger link between the true nature of the crisis and what's written in the lead of a story. So keep in mind that if you're in a situation of crisis, and really that's what stealing thunder is for, it's in a circumstance of heightened stress or heightened tension in the environment or in the business environment and in the broader community. So you're keeping in mind the levels of risk, the level of timing, and the level of control. And all of those things are sort of not fixed. They do change. And so that's what you're weighing when you choose to engage this idea of stealing thunder, which is essentially, again, leveraging the audiences that you've built on your website, on your app, and through social media to communicate directly with your customers what you know, when you know it, and how you know it. So why you want to apply this, the big takeaways are you're enhancing your either your personal brand or your company's credibility. You are, by doing this, avoiding the negative outcomes with audiences and with media. And you're also, I think, practicing ethical and very practical tools that will serve your company's reputation well. And so to conclude, because my audience are, web developers and user experience researchers, I would challenge you. I think that you're incredibly equipped at being able to measure and analyze customer behavior, audience behavior, because it helps to build strong, engaged relationships with your product or service. So while doing that, what my challenge is, can we also measure then the reputation too? And that's where this idea of stealing thunder really can help with measuring those things. And so that's it for my talk today. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak about this. And I think I want to open this up to questions if there are any questions that you have at any point. Thank you.